Hi everyone. Here is my case study for Module 14. So the summary of the case study, I thought this was a really good story actually. Um, Principal Richard coming in as a new assistant principal and trying to make a connection and build relationships with the kids so they can develop that trust. I feel like that is very important. And that's something I try to do every day. I try to speak to a new student every day. So basically, he comes with this troubled kid, he meets him, and he wants him to do better. He wants better for him, and he gets on this really good streak, and all of a sudden he's starting to get absences or be late to class. And all he wanted to do was see if everything was okay. So on the way to the office, David gets stuck in the hallway with James, and James decides that he wants to give him a pair of brass knuckles so he doesn't get in trouble when he goes to the office. A teacher sees this and she reports it to the principal, and the principal thought it would be a good idea to call James and David along with the police officer all in the office at the same time, which leads to the discovery of the brass knuckles, and James and David actually end up getting arrested for the brass knuckles because it is a weapon and it was considered a felony. And David had all these good things going for him, and the mother was upset coming in, wondering why he has to get arrested, even though James took the blame for it. So it was a good case study. It was very interesting to read, just to see the perspective of a new administrative leadership role and how exactly he approached the situation. The legal or ethical issues that I found were that James had a pair of brass knuckles on his person and school property. Obviously, that is very illegal and it is a crime that resulted in him and David getting arrested. James gave the brass knuckles for David to hold while he was in the office. I felt like this was a poor ethical decision on James's part. Even though he didn't want to get in trouble, he wasn't considering David getting in trouble as well. As long as he didn't get in trouble, that's all that mattered. But he did end up fessing up to it after, which showed a lot of character on his part. Even though James admitted to the officer after the search that the brass knuckles were his and he threatened David to take them, both James and David get arrested. I do not feel like this is entirely fair, but I do understand that rules are rules and policies are set in place for a reason. David was experiencing a little bit of bullying, and he felt like he had no other choice but to take those brass knuckles from James. And he was intimidated, and in result, he actually ended up getting the same punishment as James. Principal Inman tries to step in the way of David getting arrested and sent to the DAEP, which is against school board policy. Um, Principal Richard, you can tell that he's a very caring person and he cares about the students, and he felt like the decision that he made reflected poorly on David and how it would affect David in the long run, and getting the response that he got from both parents was not something he was too happy about, and he felt like he could have done a lot more to prevent the situation. There's a 45-day expulsion process with a no tolerance rule that Principal Inman did not follow, resulting in a positional reprimand. He was trying to do the right thing, or he was trying to correct his mistake because he felt that he could have handled the situation a lot more different than what he did. And so him trying to do the right thing and being an advocate for David actually resulted in him getting his position terminated. The overview of the situation. So, in one plain sentence, Richard Inman put himself in a position to make an ethical decision in front of two students and an officer at the same time without having any background knowledge of the situation. Principal Inman just kind of brought everybody into the office and just let everything unfold without trying to interview for situations the students separately. I feel as though if he had interviewed them separately, the whole situation would have gone a lot different, especially if he got David by himself. So that way, David could actually tell him that he was experiencing bullying from James, and then get James's side of the story, and then pull the police officer in as he sees fit. The people that are involved. So you have Richard Inman. He's a first-time principal willing to make connections with students of all backgrounds. I feel like that is extremely important, and I do commend him for that because a lot of students lack that trust, and if they see that somebody cares about them, they will go to the ends of the earth for you, and they will work extremely hard. James, he's a 15-year-old tough kid who's rough around the edges, but he's getting his act together, and he's improving. They saw a really good streak with him as far as attending class and being there on time and doing his work. And then he started to fall off slowly. So that's how this whole situation began because Principal Inman was concerned. David, who's an honor student, he's involved in many school activities and has a bright future. He just got caught in the crossfire. James was picking on him in the hallway, and he felt like he had no other choice but to do what James said because he was scared for his safety. A school police officer was involved, and he was asked to remain in the office for search of contraband and actually ended up arresting both students and sending them to the DAEP program. James's parent, who was not concerned about James at all, she actually felt like him sitting in jail for a couple of days would be a lesson learned. David's mother, who's extremely upset that David is being punished, even though James took the blame, and she felt like it wasn't fair that her son had to get the same punishment as James, even though James was the one who pressured him into making that wrong decision. And the director of secondary education, he informs Inman that if he does not follow proper protocol, he will be reprimanded. The places of importance. So the incident took place at Rockwell Junior High School. The school is located on the south side of the city where Inman is from, so that's why he feels like he can relate to the kids as well as he does because he knows how they grow up and the type of environment they're in. So it makes it easier for him to relate. The exchange of actions between students took place in the hallway, and then everything else as far as the discovery of the weapon and the conversations all took place in Inman's office. The program. This program is held at a junior high with a large group of diversity. The school, has approximately 900 students. From the case study, it seems that the school offers many extracurricular activities considering everything David is involved in. I know James wasn't involved in a lot, but just seeing that David was very in tune with the school, it just seems like the school had a lot of characteristic or character building programs or things that could help you out in the long run. The case study also included the DAP program, which is a program where students go upon expulsion to continue their education while the 40-day suspension takes place. After the 40-day suspension, they are allowed to return back to school. Reviewing the actions in this situation, I would consider personally ethical and legal decision making that would not only affect myself but the people around me. I feel like that is very important. This could be damaging to stakeholders in a way that compromises the validity of their policies and create an uproar of accusations for special treatment. So if James was to get this punishment to go to DAP, and David did not get the same punishment even though he actually had the weapon on him, I feel like there would be a lot of people who would not be happy with the situation and the result if they were to allow David to not have any type of punishment. Many people are at stake in this situation, including the principal, James, David, and the school board. The school board especially by getting backlash from the community by not being able to demonstrate the capacity to evaluate the ethical dimensions of issues, analyze all decisions made in terms of framework, or communicate about and advocate for ethical and legal decisions. If they did not take all the necessary steps required with both students, this would definitely question their policies and their ethics. And I feel like a lot of people would question why they have these policies set in place in the first place if you're not going to follow them. So I feel like that's a big reason why leaders should definitely follow the policy, even though they may not entirely agree with it. But just to make sure everyone's on the same page and make sure everybody's being treated equal is important to follow those policies and then maybe be an advocate on as well. Making a decision. Based on the case study and the evidence provided, I felt that I would have had enough evidence and background knowledge to make a decision. I would have definitely got both sides of their stories. I wouldn't have had them in the office at the same time. I definitely would have talked to them separately and then see what was going on and make sure to leave no detail out of my report. I would have also gotten another principal involved or another person in a leadership role involved just so they know what's going on and so they know that I'm taking all the necessary steps to make ethical decisions and make sure that nobody feels like they're treated unfairly in the situation. What could I do in this situation? If I was placed in this situation, like I said, I would collect as much information as possible from both parties, including the teacher who actually saw the interaction in the hallway. I would consult the head principal and make them aware of the situation. I would talk to James first, considering the fact that he was the reason why we were all ended up in the office in the first place, because initially I was coming to check on him to see why he hadn't been in class. I would then consult David privately as well, getting to the bottom of the interaction that occurred in the hallway, to make sure that he was okay and see why exactly he was in the hallway and the exchange of words that him and James both had. I would also notify both students' parents of the situation right away. I would actually wait for them to come to the school if they were able to, so that way we could all sit down and talk together and make sure all the parents are aware of the situation and nobody feels left out. Lastly, I would involve the police officer as I see fit to make sure no policy expectations are being undermined, and fill out the required paperwork to report to the board upon confiscation of the weapon. The pros and cons of my actions. The pros, I definitely think following protocol and to avoid being reprimanded, because um, Principal Inman did end up losing his job, and the school board does not consult school with the unethical decisions that were made, so that way our school doesn't get any lashback about our leadership roles and the decisions, the ethical decision making that our leaders have aren't being questioned, and all parties involved get equal treatment and the same consequences per the school policy. The cons include David is receiving the same punishment even though he was a victim of bullying, which, like stated in the case study, the mother felt like this was not fair even after James owned up to it. The mother of David suffers from distraught and puts up a fight with the board policy. She was not happy about the decision, and she knows her son had a lot going for himself, and her son was not the type of student to be troubled. And some colleagues may see the ultimate decision of the students as harsh as a whole. A lot of colleagues may feel like a warning would suffice, and then some colleagues think otherwise. Section 8 and 9, does my decision make a difference? I think definitely my decision could be made with consideration over everyone involved in order to cultivate ethical behavior. I have to demonstrate that I can do what's right by making sure all the necessary parties are aware of the situation at hand. I think I would also be an advocate for bullying and let my colleagues in the community know, like, this is why the situation occurred, and we need to bring bullying to an end, or we need to actually advertise how common bullying is and how it can lead for other students to make those wrong decisions that they wouldn't normally make if they weren't under that negative type of pressure. I would especially make sure all the parents are aware of the situation that has occurred. This is a situation I feel that I could have handled on my own confidently, but I would like the assistance and support of other leaders. It's just good to have other leaders in the room because they have, different insights, different opinions, different suggestions that could possibly make the process a lot easier for myself and everybody else involved. And I would also make sure that both students understand the severity of the situation and how it could lead to severe consequences. I would especially offer my support to any underlying emotional issues that the students may need assistance with. Just like James, he's kind of rough around the edges. He had behavioral problems in the beginning, but we don't know why. We don't know what's going on at home. We don't know, if he has the supportive parents the way David would. We don't know if David's really suffering from some emotional problems when it came to bullying. So I would definitely try to get to the bottom of that as well. But I really did enjoy doing this case study. It was my first one, and I thought it was really fun, and I definitely learned a lot from it. Thank you.